under the blazing sun of a June afternoon, a man stepped out of an old SUV parked in a shadowed corner of the Aurora Motors showroom lot, a place renowned for its million-dollar luxury cars and customers dressed as if they'd just stepped off a fashion runway. He didn't bring a driver. There was no expensive watch on his wrist, just a middle-aged black man wearing a faded grey hoodie, dust-covered sneakers, and worn-out jeans. His name was Malik Rivers, but no one inside the showroom knew that. No one knew he was the new owner of Aurora Motors, the premier luxury car showroom chain he had acquired just 3 weeks ago. And Malik didn't say a word, because today he didn't come to introduce himself with a grand speech to the staff. He didn't come to review sales reports. He didn't come to count how many cars were sold this week. He came to observe quietly, to test something few CEOs ever dare to try. If I weren't the owner, would I still be respected? And just a few steps after he pushed open the glass doors and walked into the showroom, a space scented with real leather and polished wax, the answer had already begun to form in his eyes. The first glance from the front desk was a flicker of confusion followed by dismissal. A group of employees chatting nearby suddenly quieted. A few raised their eyebrows slightly, eyes scanning him from head to toe as if reading an invisible barcode. Not a VIP customer. Then, from the far end of the showroom, the sound of sharp, confident heels echoed. A woman in her mid-30s, hair tied in a tight bun, dressed in a fitted blazer and glossy brown stilettos, walked toward him. Her expression was polite, but her eyes were calculating. Karen Holtz, the showroom manager, had just stepped onto the stage of a test she had no idea she was about to take. "Hello? Can I help you?" Her tone was stiff, lacking even the slightest warmth. "I just wanted to take a look at a few models," Malik replied, his voice calm. "The vehicles here are quite exclusive," she said, her eyes still fixed on his hoodie. "Typically, we only assist clients with appointments who have already been financially pre-qualified." Malik let out a faint smile. He'd seen that look before, back when he was a garage apprentice, nervously asking for an internship at a dealership and getting rejected for not looking professional enough. History was repeating itself, but this time, he wasn't the one being tested. He was the one observing. No one in that showroom knew the man they were silently judging was the one holding the future of the entire staff in his hands. No one realized they weren't evaluating a customer. They were revealing their own values by the way they treated someone they assumed wasn't worth their service. And Malik said nothing. He simply watched. Every word, every glance, every snap judgment. A long day was just beginning, and it was about to change everything. Before there was Aurora Motors, before the investment firm, or the 7-figure bank account, Malik Rivers was just a boy from the South Red Hill neighborhood, a place where even an old used car was a far-off dream for most kids. His father was a mechanic, a quiet man with calloused hands who used to tell him, "If you want respect, you'll have to work twice as hard as anyone else." His mother worked night shifts as a nurse, the kind of woman who would whisper over modest dinners, "No one truly sees you, Malik, not until you become something they can't ignore." And Malik did exactly that. He studied by day, worked by night, saved up scholarship money and car wash tips to get into a mechanical engineering program. During his internship, he would never forget the first time he walked into a luxury car showroom where the manager and security guard wouldn't even let him stand near the display vehicle, simply because you don't look like someone who can afford this. No apology, no acknowledgement, just one cold sentence, sharp as a blade. This isn't a place for you to be hanging around. That wound never healed. It just buried itself deeper into his memory and silently turned into a promise. One day, I'll have my own showroom, and no one in it will ever have to feel small, no matter what they wear, where they're from, or how much money they have. A few years later, Malik started his first business, a small auto customization shop, specializing in restoring the interiors of forgotten cars. His very first customer was a retired doctor who looked at Malik and said, "You've got hands that understand things most people don't even notice." From that moment, the shop grew into a company. The company expanded into a full-blown enterprise. Malik didn't just sell cars, he sold belief, the belief that anyone had the right to walk into a luxury space without being judged. So when Aurora Motors, a prestigious chain of showrooms known for its elite clientele model, announced they were selling shares, Malik didn't hesitate. He didn't buy the company to change the brand. He bought it to change the mindset behind the service. And that's why, today, he showed up wearing the simplest clothes, driving the oldest vehicle, walking into the most expensive store in the system without telling a soul. Because if someone like me can still be turned away here, then it doesn't matter how many cars we sell, we're still failing. Malik didn't come to get revenge on the past. He came to protect the future of customers who were once just like him. And the first test had already begun. The automatic glass doors of Aurora Motors' Red Hill branch slid open quietly, revealing the luxury inside, overhead lights gleaming off the polished black coupes, pristine marble floors glowing, and the subtle scent of fine leather lingering in the air like a silent declaration. We serve those who qualify. Malik Rivers stepped in. No suit, no tie, no wealthy posture. He moved quietly toward the showroom floor. A pair of front desk employees gave him a brief glance, then turned back to their private laughter. A sales consultant, deep in conversation with an older couple in business attire, didn't even notice the man who had just walked in. A showroom designed to project exclusivity was now operating exactly as intended. Exactly that. Only those who look like VIPs are truly treated like customers. Malik knew this. He didn't blame them for not recognizing who he was. He was waiting to see if, without a title, he would still be heard. And then, from the far right corner of the showroom, a voice called out, "Excuse me, are you looking for someone? Karen Holtz?" The showroom's general manager, a sharp-featured woman with meticulously done eye makeup, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, the kind worn by women who know that appearances matter just as much as competence in places like this. She approached with a polite smile. The kind of smile people wear when they haven't yet decided whether you're worth a real one. Malik gave a small nod. I'm just looking at a few cars. Karen gave him a full-body scan. Faded hoodie, worn sneakers, no watch, no outward signs of being someone who could afford even the cheapest car on the floor. She smiled, but her voice was cold as stone. I'm afraid we operate by appointment only, and the vehicles here all start in the six-figure range. If you'd like, I can recommend a few nearby used car dealerships. Malik didn't flinch. He slowly reached out and ran his hand gently across the smooth paint of a silver coupe next to him. "This one's beautiful," he said, as if he hadn't heard her heavily coded suggestion at all. Karen quickly stepped forward, placing herself between him and the car, her expression tightening. "I'm sorry, but for the sake of maintaining showroom cleanliness, we ask guests not to touch the display vehicles unless guided by a sales associate." Malik withdrew his hand. No protest, just a quiet nod. Every word she spoke like a brick being laid. And now, the wall between them had grown so tall, it completely blocked out who he truly was. "So tell me," he asked, voice steady, "what kind of car do you think someone like me should be buying?" Karen hesitated for just a second. Then she returned to her professional smile, "I think some of our pre-owned models might be a better fit, practical and fuel efficient. I can print you a few listings to look over." It wasn't malice, but it was unconscious bias, wrapped neatly in a veneer of professional consultation, the most dangerous kind. Malik smiled. This time, the smile held a chill. "Thank you for your honesty, but I think I'd prefer to speak with someone higher up." Karen raised an eyebrow. "I'm the manager here. If you have any concerns, I'll be the one assisting you." "Then, could you arrange for me to meet the owner of this dealership?" Malik asked, his eyes locked on hers. Karen let out a small laugh, the kind of laugh people give when they think they've just heard something absurd. "The owner isn't here. And to be frank, they wouldn't come in just to meet someone who wants to look at a few cars." Malik said nothing, but his eyes began to shift, no longer filled with quiet observation, but with something deeper, disappointment. Karen turned away briefly to retrieve a stack of used car listings from the front desk. She returned less than a minute later, hands holding a glossy packet, her tone as flat as a corporate voicemail. "I've selected a few models that I believe would be more realistic for your budget," she said. Malik took the packet, glanced through it quickly. The first, a 2013 Toyota Camry. The second, a Hyundai Elantra with 80,000 miles. The last, a small beige hybrid, the kind of car people choose when they're counting every penny at the gas pump. Not a single question about his actual needs. No opportunity to explore or express preferences. Only assumptions made solely based on a hoodie and a pair of worn sneakers. Malik folded the paper neatly and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "You think I can't afford a car here?" he asked, his voice unusually calm. Karen froze for just a second, but then she quickly regained her professional posture. "I'm just trying to save you some time. The truth is, Aurora Motors isn't for everyone. We work with thoroughly vetted clients and I wouldn't want you to feel like you're wasting yours." Wasting it, Malik repeated softly, almost like a breath. Karen continued, this time with a hint of impatience in her tone. Please understand, every minute of our time is valuable. If everyone just walked in here to browse without being qualified. She trailed off, but her eyes finished the sentence for her. And in that exact moment, Malik felt like he was 17 again, standing outside that old dealership with grease-stained hands, being waved away like some kind of nuisance. He was no longer a CEO, no longer the man who had purchased Aurora Motors. He was just a black man in everyday clothes being judged as if he didn't belong in that space. Malik lifted his head. His gaze remained calm. But deep within, a thin layer of ice inside him cracked. How long have you worked here? He asked, his voice soft. Karen answered quickly. 7 years. And I know exactly what kind of customer actually buys, and what kind just comes in to dream. Malik nodded slowly. So if I really wanted to buy that silver coupe over there, do you think I'd qualify? Karen let out a short laugh. You're seriously interested, she said, half laughing. That car is a limited edition. It's over $180,000. We require a minimum $20,000 deposit and a full financial screening first. And you don't think I can do that? I'm being realistic, she replied, no longer masking anything. No more insinuations, no more polite maneuvering. Now, disrespect had become the official language. Malik let out a quiet breath, as if confirming something he'd once hoped no longer existed. He didn't get angry. He didn't raise his voice. He simply slipped his hand into his pocket and looked Karen straight in the eye. I'd like to speak to someone above you. I already told you the owner doesn't come here, Karen said flatly. Then I'll give him a call, Malik replied, pulling out his phone. Karen paused for half a second, then burst out laughing. The first time she had truly dropped her mask during their conversation. No more politeness, no more pretense, just raw, unfiltered mockery. You're going to call who? Exactly the president of Aurora Motors. Trust me, they're not picking up. Malik dialed, raised the phone to his ear. We'll see, he said quietly. And then he turned his back and began the call. Malik turned his back to Karen and raised the phone to his ear. His voice was low and direct, like someone speaking to a very familiar contact. Hey, it's me. I'm at the Red Hill showroom. There's been a bit of a misunderstanding. Think you could stop by for a moment? Thanks. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't anger. Just a calm message, but enough to send thin cracks rippling through the air of the showroom. Karen remained where she was, arms crossed, her expression caught somewhere between skepticism and mockery. You know someone at this company? She asked, brow slightly raised. Malik didn't answer. He simply turned around and offered a polite smile. I think he'll want to see me today. A few employees nearby began to take notice. One at the cashier's desk leaned over and whispered something to a co-worker. A technician walking by slowed his pace. No one understood exactly what was going on, but everyone felt something was off. Karen tried to maintain her stance, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Listen, she said, lowering her voice. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, But please don't make this any more awkward than it already is. I'm not doing anything, Malik replied. I'm just letting you see yourself. Karen furrowed her brow. It took her a few seconds to register the meaning of that sentence. And then the main glass doors swung open. A man in a navy blue suit stepped inside, tall, composed, confident, with sharp eyes and a quiet authority. Derek Vaughan, Regional Director, in charge of all East Division showrooms. The moment he crossed the threshold, his eyes immediately locked onto Malik. No surprise, no questions, just a wide, genuine smile. Mr. Rivers, so good to see you here. Karen froze. Her face turned from flushed to pale in an instant. The clipboard in her hand suddenly felt weightless, dangling uselessly at her side. The entire showroom went silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Derek strode over and extended a hand. Malik took it calm, natural, without a hint of pride or performance. Thanks for coming so quickly, Malik said. Derek nodded, then turned to Karen. His smile faded, replaced by a firm, professional tone. I see you've already met our new owner, haven't you? Karen's mouth fell open. No words came out. You're... she stammered, like someone trying to piece together the fragments of a dream that had just shattered. Derek confirmed it gently, but firmly. Mr. Malik Rivers is the new owner of Aurora Motors as of 3 weeks ago, and if I'm not mistaken, this isn't exactly how we should have welcomed him, is it? The truth dropped heavy as a hammer. Just a minute ago, she was the one making the judgment. Now, she was the one being judged by her own actions. Karen looked at Malik, the man she had just tried to redirect to a used car lot, the man she'd confidently told, "This place isn't for you." He looked back, no anger in his eyes, just a quiet, aching disappointment that seemed to echo louder than any words. "I didn't come here to cause trouble," Malik said softly. "I just wanted to understand how things really work around here." And now, he understood. Karen stood frozen, the clipboard in her hand, once a symbol of authority, now hung like dead weight, no longer a badge of control, but a flimsy shield for a pride that was rapidly crumbling. "You own this place?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if her own ears couldn't believe what they were hearing. Malik didn't answer right away. He looked around the showroom, a space where every pair of eyes was now fixed on him. Several employees had stopped what they were doing. The whole room felt pulled tight by an invisible string, one breath away from snapping. Then he turned back to Karen. "I'm the one who bought Aurora Motors 3 weeks ago," Malik said slowly, each word sinking deeper into the room. "I'm the one who decides the direction this company will take, starting today." Karen took half a step back. Her face had gone pale. I had no idea," she stammered. Derek Vaughan, still standing beside them, crossed his arms and nodded slowly, as if confirming that, yes, she had dug her own hole and just stepped straight into it. Malik didn't gloat. He didn't humiliate, but every word he spoke carried the weight of a man who had once been walked over and now stood tall, not out of revenge, but out of truth. Not knowing isn't an excuse, he said, his gaze steady but not cruel. I don't blame you for not recognizing me. I blame the way you look at people when you think they don't matter. Karen lowered her head. She couldn't argue. There was no space left for excuses like I was just following protocol. I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking. Malik took one step closer, not in threat, not in dominance, but simply to make sure his words reached her clearly. If today I were just an ordinary man, not the owner, would I still deserve to be treated with respect? She looked up. A single tear had formed at the corner of her eye. I don't know anymore, she exhaled. Then this is the moment to find out. Malik said, not because I'm the owner, but because I'm a human being just like anyone who walks through these doors. And the showroom, once filled with the hum of air conditioning, footsteps, and the tapping of keyboards, was now so still you could hear your own heartbeat. Then Malik turned to Derek, his voice now calm and collected once more. Could you gather all the staff in the conference room? Malik asked, his voice steady. I think it's time we had a real conversation. Derek nodded without hesitation. Karen remained still. She hadn't moved an inch. It was as if she no longer knew where to go, what to say, or even how to exist in the space she used to command. Malik gave her one final glance. I didn't come here to tear anyone down. I came to find out if the place I put my trust in is truly worthy of it. And today, that trust was on shaky ground, but it wasn't too late. The main conference room at Aurora Motors, Red Hill branch, was wide and modern, with floor-to-ceiling glass looking out over the parking lot. Usually, it hosted strategy sessions, KPI reviews, and sales reports. But today, it would become a place of reckoning. All staff were called in. No one hesitated. Karen took a seat at the far end of the table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Others stole glances at her, then at Malik, then looked away. No one spoke. The air felt thick, as if one wrong word could shatter the entire room. Malik Rivers entered last, his stride calm and unhurried. He carried no laptop, no slideshow, just himself, a man, a story and a heart waiting to see if anyone in this room still beat to the same rhythm. He stood at the head of the table, no need for an introduction, no mention of titles. He simply began, slowly. Thank you all for being here today. No one responded. Malik scanned the room, each face avoiding his gaze, and continued. I'm Malik Rivers. I'm the one who purchased Aurora Motors 3 weeks ago, but I didn't come here to make an announcement. I came to listen and to share something with you. He paused. The air conditioner hummed softly. Somewhere, someone swallowed the sound unusually loud in the heavy silence. I walked into this showroom today not as the owner, but as a regular person, and I was treated just like anyone else who walks in here without designer clothes, a Rolex or a Mercedes. No names needed, no public call-outs. The truth was now laid bare for everyone to see, and what disappointed me wasn't that I was misunderstood. It was the way we've come to assume that only a certain kind of person deserves to be treated with kindness. A young employee seated near the center, Brian timidly raised his hand. Malik gave him a small nod. I'm sorry, Brian said quietly. I think we've just gotten used to judging customers by how they look. No one ever told us to do it, but over time, it became automatic. Malik nodded again. Thank you for your honesty. And you're right, no one teaches us to judge others. But when we stay silent too long in the face of wrong behavior, that silence becomes a lesson in itself. The entire room seemed to settle into stillness. Another employee, a woman in her 30s, spoke in a hushed voice. I didn't realize I'd ever made a customer feel small, but I probably did. Malik turned toward her. We've all made mistakes. The real question is, do we have the courage to make it right? He drew in a slow, steady breath before continuing. Aurora Motors used to be known for the quality of its cars, but from now on, I want it to be known for the quality of its people. We don't just sell vehicles, we sell experience, trust, and most importantly, the feeling of being respected. I don't need a team that's technically flawless. I need a team that knows how to listen. The room remained silent, not out of fear now, but out of reflection. Malik ended with one final sentence. We will change, not because I'm the owner, but because if we don't, no one will truly want to walk through these doors ever again. After his words faded, the room stayed steeped in heavy quiet. No one dared be the first to speak, as if silence, held long enough, might somehow make it all disappear. But then, a hand slowly lifted into the air. It was Brian, the young staff member who had only been working there for 7 months. His voice trembled slightly, but his eyes held steady. I know I'm new here, but this is the first time I've ever seen an owner speak like that, Brian said. Malik gave a slight nod, motioning for him to continue. We didn't mean to discriminate, honestly. It's just, we were trained to identify high-potential customers. And over time, we started believing that anyone in a hoodie, driving an old car, definitely couldn't afford anything here. It became a habit. No one told us to act that way, but no one ever taught us not to either. A few others nodded, hesitant at first, then quietly fell silent again. Malik kept his eyes on Brian for a few more seconds, then spoke. I get it. Trust me. I grew up in a world where one look could decide your opportunity and your dignity. And that's exactly why I cannot accept that we, of all people who have been judged, are now the ones doing the judging. The room fell silent once again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was listening. Another employee, Melissa, from customer care, lowered her voice. I once turned away a customer because I thought they were just here to look around for fun, Melissa said softly. But later I found out they were an engineer at NASA and they bought that car from another branch. I felt so ashamed. I couldn't sleep. Malik looked at her directly. There was no judgment in his eyes, only quiet sincerity. That shame is actually a good sign. It means you still care about the fact that you hurt someone. He began walking slowly around the table, each step cutting through the heavy air, brushing up against the quiet reflection inside every person seated there. We can't change yesterday. But if we still feel the weight of it today, then maybe tomorrow can be different. He stopped. His gaze drifted to the far end of the table where Karen still sat silently, hands tightly clasped, eyes downcast. Malik didn't call her name. He didn't force her to speak. He let the silence do its work because sometimes remorse doesn't need to be dragged out into the light. It only needs to be acknowledged. I'm not here to supervise or punish, Malik said. I'm here to find out, does this culture still have room for truth and compassion? And then he ended with a message soft but sharp enough to cut deep. I used to walk into places like this and get thrown out by security just for wearing work clothes. Today, I'm the owner. But tomorrow, it might be another kid like I once was. So tell me, will that kid be greeted with a smile at the door, or judged by the shoes on his feet? No one answered, but Malik knew change had just begun. The room fell completely silent, still, heavy, listening. Malik stood in place, hands calmly folded in front of him, eyes moving slowly across the faces of his employees until they landed on one. Karen Holtz. She still sat at the end of the table, but her posture had collapsed, her back no longer straight. Her shoulders slumped, hands clenched tightly in her lap, like if she let go, she might fall apart. Malik walked toward her, but stopped just short. He kept a respectful distance. No pressure, no intimidation. Karen, he said, gently but clearly. She lifted her head. The sharpness in her eyes was gone, replaced by emptiness and shame. She began, her voice faltering. I didn't mean to offend you. I was just doing what I always do with customers. Malik nodded slightly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush her. I believe you didn't mean to, he said. But sometimes, the most hurtful things don't come from malice. They come from people believing they're simply doing the right thing. Karen bit her lip. Her eyes began to redden. I've worked here for 7 years, she said, voice tight. I thought I knew how to read people. Who had money, who was just browsing for fun. But today, I realized I was wrong, not just wrong about you, but wrong about everyone I ever thought wasn't worthy of real service. It wasn't a perfect admission, but it was real. Malik nodded again, then stepped forward slowly, deliberately. I didn't come here to tear anyone down, but I also didn't come to preserve a culture that makes people feel small." He paused. If today it hadn't been me, but a single father who's been saving for 10 years to buy his first car and got turned away because he was wearing old khakis, what then? Karen didn't answer, but her tears began to fall. Not loud, not dramatic, just a human being, finally seeing herself in the mirror for the first time in years. Malik lowered his voice, but not his dignity. "I believe everyone has the right to be wrong, but the right to make it right belongs only to those brave enough to face their mistakes." He turned to the entire room. "We can retrain skills, but character that has to come from within. I'm not firing Karen today, not because I'm soft, but because if I did, I'd be teaching all of you that mistakes can't be redeemed, and I don't believe that." Karen let out a quiet sob. Malik looked at her not with judgment, but with plain truth. "I don't need promises. I need to see how you walk from here." And the room, once a place for deals and strategies, had now become a place where a human being found herself again, not through her title, but through the pain she had caused and the choice to own it. After a quiet moment in which Karen wiped her tears, Malik straightened up and turned to face the entire team. The light from the tall glass window behind him spilled into the conference room, casting a soft glow around him, not the kind of glow that comes from prestige, but the kind that surrounds someone willing to shine a light on the truth. He drew in a deep breath, then spoke, his voice low and firm. "I don't care what your job title is today. You might be a manager, a sales rep, a receptionist, or a security guard. But if you're in this room, you are part of the transformation we're about to begin. And that journey will start with humility." Malik stepped to the head of the table, gently placing a hand on the dark wood surface, the same table where thick financial reports used to sit in stacks. "Starting next week, we'll launch a new internal training program, not just about sales skills, but about how we perceive people. We're going to relearn how to see our customers with our hearts, not just with our eyes." A few employees exchanged glances, not out of disagreement, but because they had never heard anyone say something like that in a place where numbers had always come first. Malik continued, his gaze sharp like a diamond, not because it was hard, but because it was clear. "I'm not building a luxury car empire. I'm building a place where anyone can walk through the door without fear of being judged. No matter what they drive, no matter what they wear, no matter how much they have in their bank account." He paused, then spoke slowly, each word landing like a nail sealing the coffin of a worn-out culture. "I'm eliminating the term potential customer from our internal vocabulary. Because here, if you walk in, you are a customer. And if you are a human being, you deserve the same respect as anyone else." No one said a word, but the air had shifted. Gone was the thick tension from the beginning of the meeting, replaced by a quiet movement, like minds beginning to peel back the old foggy lenses they once believed were necessary filters. Malik looked into their eyes. Some began to nod, slowly. Others remained silent, but their eyes had softened. Then he closed with a promise, I won't measure your worth by how many cars you sell each week. I'll measure it by how many customers walk out of this showroom with a real smile, not because they just bought a car, but because they finally felt seen for who they are. And if you can't align yourself with that mission, I won't keep you here." There was no threat in his voice, but there was no escape for indifference either. Malik stepped back slightly from the head of the table, as if reclaiming a quiet space in his mind just before opening a door no one in the room expected. His voice slowed, deepened, no longer carrying the weight of a business owner, but the vulnerability of a man sharing a memory he had once tried to bury. I remember that day so clearly. I was 17, wearing an old t-shirt borrowed from my older brother, still smelling like engine grease. My hands were rough from after-school shifts at the local repair shop. The entire room held its breath. The wall clocks still ticked, but in that moment time stood still inside his story. That day, I walked 5 blocks to a luxury car showroom, not to buy anything, just to reach out and touch a dream. I stepped in. Didn't even get the chance to grab the door handle before an older security guard walked out. He looked me up and down and said, "This place isn't for a little grease boy like you. Go back to your garage." Malik paused. For the first time since the meeting began, his eyes welled up, not out of weakness, but because an old wound had just been touched by fresh air. I didn't say a word, just lowered my head and walked away. But I made a promise to myself that day that if I ever had the power, I'd build a place that would never say those words to anyone. Karen looked down, her hands trembling. Brian swallowed hard. An older staff member gently placed her hand over her heart, as if recalling a mistake she once made. Without even realizing it, Malik continued, his voice steadier now, but the emotion beneath his calm was undeniable. 3 weeks ago, I bought Aurora Motors, and today I walked into this very place, not for revenge, but to see if that 17-year-old kid walked in again, would he still be turned away? The room fell completely silent. No one was texting, no one sneaking glances at the clock. Every eye, even from those who hadn't spoken once, was locked on Malik, because for the first time in the entire meeting, they weren't just hearing an owner speak, they were hearing a man who had once been a victim of bias, trying to stop that same bias from growing in the people sitting right in front of him. Malik lowered his voice. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you this to remind you that when you stand at the edge of serving someone or shutting them out, you're standing in the very spot where someone once hurt a person so deeply they never forgot it." He exhaled softly, a faint smile flickering in his tired eyes. "I kept my promise to that 17-year-old boy. Now it's your turn to keep the promise to yourselves about the kind of person you want to be." 1 week after the meeting, the Aurora Motors showroom at Red Hill still shone under the same ceiling lights. The black coupes remained still, pristine under their glassy sheen. Employees in neatly pressed shirts, name tags clipped to their chests, greeted customers with polished, professional smiles. On the surface, nothing had changed. But Malik knew better. Real change, is never loud. He sat far back, in the glass-walled office on the second floor, looking down at the showroom floor. No one knew he was there, and he didn't need them to, because today he wasn't there to inspect. He had come to listen once more. Then he saw her, Karen, stepping out from the consultation room. No clipboard, no razor-sharp heels. Just a simple woman, with a gaze that had grown quieter, more grounded. She walked toward the front, where a young man stood hesitantly near the entrance. His t-shirt was faded, his sneakers worn at the soles. There was a smudge of paint on his hands, maybe from some job done by hand that morning. Malik held his breath. If this had been a week ago, Karen might have offered a stiff smile and pointed the young man toward the nearest used car lot. But today, she walked toward him, smiled. Not a customer service smile, but a real one. The kind that comes from someone who's been wrong and is now learning how to do right. "Hi there. First time visiting our showroom?" she asked, her voice soft and warm. The young man flinched slightly, then nodded, his voice barely audible. Yeah. I just wanted to look at a few cars. I know I probably can't afford anything yet, but..." Karen didn't let him finish. She nodded and cut in with a line that made Malik, watching from above, smile to himself. "That's okay. Around here, everyone has the right to walk in and dream big." She held the door open for him, welcoming him in like an honored guest. The young man paused, stunned, then stepped inside, as if walking into a world he'd always assumed wasn't meant for someone like him. Malik leaned back in his chair, eyes soft with quiet focus. But deep in his chest, something warm had returned. No need for slogans, no banners announcing cultural transformation. Sometimes, all it takes is one person who once got it wrong to choose what's right the second time. And Malik knew the journey they were on, though long, had taken its first step in the right direction. That afternoon, as the showroom began to quiet down, Karen made her way to the second floor. No clipboard, no heels. Just one thing in hand, the silence required before an honest conversation. The door to Malik's office was slightly ajar. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, eyes watching the young man she had welcomed earlier, now beaming as he explored the interior of a new sedan. Karen knocked softly. Malik turned, nodded. "Come in." She stepped inside, closed the door behind her, and stood quietly for a moment. No longer the commanding presence of a team leader, just a woman who knew she had been wrong, and was now searching for the courage to make it right. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her voice small but sincere, "for what Malik asked, gently, for not firing me that day, for giving me the chance to realize I was wrong without being humiliated in front of the world." Malik nodded, slowly walking toward his desk. He didn't sit down. He simply stood there as if still waiting for something more important than words. Karen took a deep breath. Her hands clenched, then relaxed. "I've done a lot of thinking," Not just about you, but about all the people I've ever greeted in this place, and how I never really saw them as human beings. I don't know how much I can undo, but I just want to say, I won't let you down." Malik looked directly at her, not with the gaze of a boss evaluating an employee, but the gaze of someone who had once been hurt, weighing whether he had the strength to trust again. He responded, slow but certain, "I don't need you to be perfect. Karen, I need you to be real and brave, because real change doesn't come from the people who've never been wrong. It comes from the ones who admit they were and still choose to move forward." Karen pressed her lips together, nodded. "I will. Not for this job, but because I don't want to live another day without truly seeing the person standing in front of me." Malik smiled gently, not out of satisfaction, but because he had just witnessed a seed begin to sprout, in the very soil where judgment used to grow. "Good," he said. "Then let's begin again, but this time with kindness." She nodded, eyes shimmering but steady. That day ended like any other. No celebration, no applause, just the golden hue of sunset casting a soft glow through the glass, spilling across the motionless luxury cars inside the Aurora Red Hill showroom. Malik stood alone back in his familiar spot on the second floor, where he could usually see everything. But today, he simply wanted to watch the light. He saw Brian chatting earnestly with an older couple dressed in modest clothing. He saw Melissa carefully polishing the nameplate of a new vehicle, even though no one had asked her to. And he saw Karen no longer the sharp-edged manager from last week, but a woman learning again how to open her heart. No strategic plans, no slogans. It was enough the way each of them had begun choosing to treat others differently. Malik smiled, his eyes catching his own reflection in the glass, and he thought to himself, maybe success isn't measured by how many cars we sell, but by how many people walk through that door and no longer feel small. He turned away, picked up his jacket. Before leaving, he placed a small note on the conference table, the same table where the most important conversation since becoming CEO had taken place. It read, "From today on, we don't just sell cars, we restore belief. The belief that here everyone deserves to be seen through eyes of respect. If you've ever walked into a room and felt invisible, if you've ever been judged because of what you wore, what you do, or where you came from, then this story was meant for you, because sometimes the person who was dismissed becomes the one who changes the entire system. And the one who once got it wrong, if they're brave enough to face it, can become the person who reignites kindness for an entire team." Malik Rivers didn't build a luxury car showroom. He built a place where everyone is welcomed equally. No business card required, no thick wallet needed. Just be human, and you deserve respect. If this story touched something in you, share it with someone who's ever felt like they weren't enough. Leave a comment. I believe in a kinder world. And if you've ever met someone like Malik, say thank you before they walk away, never knowing the impact they made. Because sometimes that simple thank you might be the reason someone still believes in goodness tomorrow. Like, share, subscribe to True Rank Stories. Let's spread the kind of stories that help us slow down and stay human.
Chantedo.